Hey, this is Dave from metalepidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What's up guys, Dave here from Metal Epidemic, back with another album review, and Duncan Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from French progressive death metal band Fractal Universe. The band's new album, The Impassable Horizon, will be released on June 25th via Metal Blade Records. So these guys have been on the go since around 2013, and The Impassable Horizon is the band's third full-length album, which follows up the 29 release Rhizomes of Insanity. Rhizomes? I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Rhizomes? For this album though, drums were recorded at the band's own professional recording studio, Boundless Production Studio in France, while the other instruments were tracked in their personal home studios. It was overseen by producer Flavien Morel, who has worked with the band on their previous releases. I really enjoyed their 2019 release. As I said, they are a progressive death metal band, but that's not the only kind of sound they have overall. They definitely mix in more kind of technical death metal elements, as well as some kind of traditional kind of prog moments, and some kind of more modern shades of prog as well. I think because of that, they can be a difficult band to kind of digest in like a short space of time. I certainly found like their last release, it kind of grew on me over time, and this one was a little similar in that it took maybe 2 or 3 listens to kind of fully absorb this release. But what I would say about this album is, from the kind of get-go, it sounds more mature in a lot of ways than their previous release. And that's not to say that they sounded kind of like undeveloped on their last album, but they definitely have more of a grasp on what really works for them as a band. I think they've taken each element of the band's sound and really kind of sharpened it on this release. Whether it's the kind of techier parts of their sound or the melodies, for me it just lands so much better on this album. One gripe I had with the last album was I often found myself wondering if I was on the same song or if I had moved on to the next one. Whereas with this album, I didn't really get that feeling. Each track for me had its own personality. Whether that was like a hook or it be a kind of riff or a vocal melody that made me go, oh right, I recognise this is the chorus from A Clockwork Expectation, or the little harmonics added to the riffs on things like Falls of the Earth, or the saxophone solo on Black Sails of Melancholia. As an album, it just had kind of way more distinctive moments that really stood out and made this a kind of more memorable album. I think they've definitely upped the amount of melodic vocals on this one as well. That was one thing that really stood out. And that for me, I think makes this album even more interesting. As much as I love the kind of death metal growls, Vince has a really stunning, clean vocal tone. I really liked the fact that they've leaned on that more on this album, as well as keeping the heavier, more kind of deathy stuff that he does and throwing in a blend of both of those to get that kind of tonal style scream, which at times actually was kind of reminding me of The Ocean. Certain kind of vocal melodies and styles, it just kind of made my mind go back to like the last couple of releases from The Ocean. Tracks like Interfering Spherical Scenes not only had that kind of like vocal similarity, but even in some of the riffs, it had like a kind of progressive, almost like Virgin and post-metal feel to it. But this album as a whole actually felt more melancholic. It had a progressive, sorry, not progressive. It feels more direct in a lot of ways, but it definitely got a darker atmosphere to it than a lot of their previous material. A little bit kind of catatonia at times, actually. I could hear a little bit of Jonas on that kind of opening track. And there were so many other kind of different sounds and influences coming through on this one. Some that they've always been there with the band. Your kind of Cynic and Obscura. There's a bit of Opeth in there. And then you've got some more kind of modern streaks from bands like Haken, or even a little bit of Textures at times as well. But one other thing I did get was there's quite a bit of Gojira on this one, which I can't remember ever being so kind of obvious before. I need to go back and re-listen to that last album again, but certainly on tracks like Symmetrical Masquerade or even Withering Snowdrops, the heavier riffs and some of the rhythms had kind of swaths of kind of Gojira about them. And I mentioned this already, but I love the addition of the saxophone on this album. It's not the first time that they've done this. They did experiment with it on their last release. And there's other kind of progressive death metal bands that have used this as well. Rivers of Nile, for example, have used it on previous albums. But this is the first time it was done by Vince. And so not only is he the vocalist, who does all the vocals, and the guitarist, he's now added saxophone as well to that list. And it's really well done. I mean, I read that he only started to learn to play saxophone in 2019.
Oh, fuck off.
And this is the level that he's playing at already. So it just kind of blows my mind. And I think it's really tastefully done as well. They don't overdo it. It's not on every single track. They just kind of lead it in every now and again, and I think it makes such a difference. For me, this is probably the most complete package Fractal Universe has offered up in their career. Not only did they sound the best they have ever sounded, but I think this album delivers such a great balance of all their skills and styles, and it does a great job of fitting them all in. And it kind of fits in with kind of more kind of modern progressive bands as well, but it doesn't abandon their more traditional roots either. It's an album that's it's pretty close to perfect, to be honest. I think there were only a couple of tracks here that didn't completely kind of sink their hooks into me, but really there wasn't much to complain about here at all. And once again, I just want to take my hat off to Vince. He's just bringing so much to the table here, from the arrangements and the writing of the music. He even does the drum parts. I mean, he writes the drum parts as well. To the delivery of the kind of various vocal styles, the guitar parts. And I know like this album, it wouldn't be possible without the rest of the band. It's clear to hear that they've delivered the goods on this as well. The execution of the drum parts are phenomenally tight. The bass work is intricate, but it knows when to pull back. And guitar-wise, as I said, this could be some of their best work to date, to be honest. I'm really impressed with this. I enjoyed their last album, but I think they've definitely kicked it up a level on this new album, the Impassable Horizon. Duncan, what was your thoughts on this one?
So I'm new to this band. I'm not familiar with them at all.
Okay.
Did peg them as French, though, pretty quickly, so... fucking score one to McLeish. Yeah, I got through this the first time and I was entirely unsure how I felt about it. To the point where this was the first one I listened to from the stuff you sent through last week, and then I didn't revisit it for maybe about 3 days. I think it was close to Sunday, Monday before I put it back on again. A couple of reasons behind that. It is the longest, and everything else you had sent through for review this week was relatively short, so I was like, I can listen to this 3 times in the next hour. And that's my homework done. Or I could spend the next hour listening to this, and then I still have to listen to it again. So I didn't rush back to it. I'll be honest, the second listen didn't convert me much either. The third listen hit home though. I don't know what it was about the third listen. Third listen was at night time. I was less distracted. And I think it was at that point that I really started to pick out a lot more of what was actually going on in the music here. This is one of the better written albums we've had in a while, to the point where I genuinely feel there is a true composer behind it. Really crafting every aspect, every nuance, every beat of everything. It does have this almost like a, if you imagine someone designing a house, Yeah, you need like a good foundation and all the rest, but it's not until you see the final image that you actually say, "Oh, right, that's." Like if you look at it from an aerial view, you can't imagine what room is when it's being built, but when it's finished, it all comes together, and that's kind of how I felt about this. This is the sort of album where I don't think I'd ever want to hear any singles from it, because I think out of context from the whole soundscape, I actually find it less remarkable done in that environment.
Yeah.
But like when you were talking about previous releases maybe having a gripe where you weren't entirely sure where songs finished and songs picked up, like every element here felt very well crafted. Like this flows like a motherfucker, like really well positioned. It surprised me that they are classed as melodic death metal, but then Gojira are still classed as melodic death metal, and I don't find them very death metal-y anymore. I find this very death metal-y out with the grills that you mentioned. I actually would be more inclined to lean them towards progressive post-metal than anything else. And the bands that you mentioned before, I got elements of things like ISIS in here, elements of certainly the Ocean for sure. As more of the core there than anything else. I didn't find even much about the production on the more aggressive side. Like melancholic is a great way to describe this, and it waves right through the entire release. Saxophone. I mean, you have me with saxophone. It's one of my favourite instruments. The fact that the guy's not been playing it long goes to show he's a real musician. Real musicians can like pretty much pick up anything and without any massive degree of difficulty turn their hand to it. So he's a true musician. The fact he's also doing all the vocals though. See, when you can sing like this guy, you don't need to do death metal vocals. The fact he's got a great death metal vocal. I mean, I hate him, obviously, but the vocal melodies are sublime on this. At times, it like kind of ebbing on a bit of whimsy. There's a kind of real drifty quality to them, which I think works incredibly well. But it's all the little bits in between that made the third listen stick out for me, and then the fourth listen and the fifth listen. Like 5 hours of my life in the last week that really. So like once I went through that third listen, I was like, oh, I need to go back through this again. And this is almost like the musical equivalent of watching like a movie like Anchorman or Napoleon Dynamite, and that every time you go back to it, something else that you didn't notice was there is instantly hilarious. Something in here on the fourth listen and then the fifth listen at different points became the bit that I fixated on. It's all the nuances, it's all the little techniques that really make this a compelling listen. I think this is like when we talk about music as an art form, I think this is what we're talking about. This is what we're. It's something where I can appreciate the craft, I appreciate the technique, but I also like can't begin to put my head in the space that it takes to write everything you get here. The production is perfect. Like it's like absolutely 100% spot on. Everything's so clean, it's so audible. I'm maybe a little bit more at a loss for words than I generally would be. I personally, and this is a personal opinion, I think Godless Machinist, the last track, is too long. But it's not too long to the point where I'm like, oh, I'm sick of this, so make it end. It's just it felt a bit long compared to some of the other tracks. Also, I'm not entirely sure why there's an unplugged track at the end of it. I don't think it necessarily adds anything to it. It's a fine listen, but I don't think it sounds so different from everything else that's come before. It feels a bit weird. It kind of feels like it's been tagged on, so I don't know if that is just something where they're giving fans a little bonus by having an unplugged track at the end. But yeah, this is an exceptionally written album. It took me a couple of times to get my head in the right space. Yeah. Too, but once it fit for me, the subsequent listens have been more marvelling at the craft. And And that's probably why I'm not doubling down with any one song to say, well, this is my favourite song and this melody on this track. I'm just at awe at how well it's all constructed. Remarkable. This is definitely, like, I say this a lot, but this is definitely one of those albums that I will come back to and not listen to for pleasure. Even though I enjoy it, I'll be listening to glean more out of what it takes. Very much Catatonia, you mentioned it earlier. That previous Catatonia album, City Burials, I think that was one of the things I said. It just sounded, when you said it mostly been written by the singer, that just blew my mind. But it also kind of makes sense if you've got one key person doing predominantly the writing for something for the rest of the band. That kind of makes sense to me, in that there is almost a singular vision. The fact the rest of the band can pull it off in the recording is awesome. Yeah, I don't know. I'm waffling. I'm kind of like, it's difficult. Like, this is a sort of band where you could list 50 bands as the recommends for people to come in and listen to it, but I don't think any of those bands necessarily are the core element of what you're hearing. It's just more of, if you can appreciate the craft that all these other bands do, there's a very good chance that you're like Fractal Universe.
Yeah. And Kyle, what do you think?
You know, you were talking about that trilogy earlier.
Yes.
It's happening. It's happening. I loved it. I think it was really good.
Excellent.
As why they're called melodic death metal, I don't get, because there's definitely death metal in there. Okay, progressive death. Oh my god.
Melodic
I've
death
made
metal
a cardinal sin
different.
of naming a subgenre what it wasn't. All the metal fans are going to be after my goddamn head. And you know what? Fuck them.
Don't upset the people that download this or listen to this or stream it. Right?
Upset them as much as I like. They upset me no, I'm kidding. I'm very sorry. No, this was really good. Progressive death metal. Yeah, that makes more sense. I mean, there's a lot of death metal in this. That fucking singer, he's the one that does. I didn't catch that. He's the one that just wrote all of it.
Pretty much.
Suddenly feel massively insignificant as a goddamn musician, let me tell you. I'm just gonna quit and go live in a hole. Oh my god, there's just so much to unpack on this album. I've listened to it like 7,000 times since I got it. And it just, every time you listen to it, it's like a Nine Inch Nails album. Every time you listen to it, there's something new that pokes out at you, and it's unbelievable, because you don't think there would be. You're like, oh, that was a good song. There's like the random saxophone, which works really well, and then the piano parts that actually work. And okay, I agree, the unplugged song at the end was maybe a bit, what's the word, extra, and didn't really need to be there, but I liked it still.
It's not that I dislike it, it's just it feels tagged on.
It does, yeah. It's just like, here you go, here's something extra. Well, okay, fine. But no, I love that it just mixes everything up in such an interesting way, and it never feels forced, not even a single time. It's like, oh, we do this stuff and this stuff and this stuff, and we can go from really heavy to really quite atmospheric and really light and airy and all that stuff, but it never feels like it's just start or anything like that. It flows really well, and all the songs go great together. And yeah, that last song, I agree, was a little bit on the long side, but again, not in a bad way. Maybe in like, okay, you can end it now. That would have been a good ending there, but you went on a bit more. But that's fine. It's an artistic expression, and the production, let me tell you, there's a small bit of studio fuckery, just a small bit, but not enough to like disown it. It's like, there's the studio enhancement, which is enhancing performance, and then the studio fucker, which is changing that performance. And I heard it done a little bit, and it may have been out of necessity. So, like, somebody fucked up a really good take or something like that. I don't know. Yeah. But that being said, I think I agree. The production is really good. It
might be a necessity from what Dave was saying if the rest of the band are recording it at home. And send it into a central location. Exactly. That probably makes sense. So.
Probably, yeah, because there'll be I mean, they'll do scratch tracks and stuff, but they may have had different timings on this shit, yeah. But yeah, so there's a bit of that, but it didn't sound like that was the style they were going for. Like a lot of bands, they just replace all the drums and time align all the guitars, and it's all fucking just plastic and crap. There's none of that on this, and it sounds really, really organic and really tight. Really, really, like, well-rehearsed tight and well played tight, not like we've edited this on a computer tight. So I really appreciate it. It was really good. The only thing I'm worried about is that we've had saxophone on a lot of things now, and I'm starting to see a bit of a trend of saxophone in metal. It's been on a lot of albums since 2013-14. It's come up quite a few times, and I'm like, it worked really well here, but I think we're going to start hearing more and more of it, maybe. and it's starting to become a bit of a trend. Like, oh, there's saxophone, it's amazing.
I think it's like a correlation that ska music is no longer popular and the saxophone players are too paying over.
Yeah. I can't believe it only picked up in 2019. Like, what the fuck? I am just going to sell all my instruments. Fucking what?
And saying that, in hindsight now, what I should have done last year is picked up an instrument during lockdown, being at home and just played a fucking shitload of it instead of playing PlayStation fucking 5. You know what I mean? That would have been the sensible thing to do. But yeah, as nuts. It's nuts.
It is nuts. This album is nuts. I couldn't believe it. Just mixing everything up and it not get boring. It's really good. Like it's just like you said, it's composed. The whole album is composed and thought through really well. It's not just song by song by song. His entire album from the bottom up has been really well put together, super well. And the fact that dude can do all of that and then scream and sing like he does is unbelievable. So hats off to him. Yeah. I'm really impressed with this. It's really really good. And I hadn't heard of them before, but I'm definitely going to go back and check them out. And look forward to what they come up with next. And if they go on tour, come to Oslo, because no one does, and I will pay money to see you. I might be the only one there, but that'll be fine.
Okay. Ratings then for the new album from Fractal Universe, The Impassable Horizon. I've really enjoyed this. As I said, I think it's a step up from that last album. It's very well done, very well executed. As I said, the only kind of small complaints I had, there was a couple of tracks that maybe just didn't quite grab me and sink their hooks in as much as the rest. But, you know, very small gripes on this one, to be honest. It's obviously been worked on for a while, because I think I read that some of this had been written back when they recorded the last album, so it has been a kind of couple of years, you know, in progress. And you can definitely hear that, you know, it definitely sounds like something they've put together, you know, it's painstakingly been put together bit by bit. But the end result is stunning, really is. I'm going to go 4.5 on this one from me. Duncan, what is your score out of 5?
I get a feeling we are all twinning tonight. 4.5 for this one from me. Yeah, it's not only a rewarding listen, but I think if you're a musician as well and you understand the craft, it's like
you're either gonna love it or you're gonna want to give up.
Yeah, I think it's doubly like, especially when you get more of those details, it's doubly rewarding. It's the sort of album that you can get lost in and marvel at the same time. Yeah, I think it's great. 4.5.
Yeah, nice. Kyle,
I'm gonna come in with a 4. 4.5.
Oh, there is the old switcheroo. The old switcheroo.
Little scamp, yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, the one thing I would say about this is definitely give it a few listens. I had, as I said, when I listened to the last album, it took me a while to get into it. And this one, again, kind of like you were saying, Duncan, it was 2 or 3 listens before it all started to kind of come into shape, and I was kind of fully absorbing it. So definitely give this 2 or 3 listens. And I think, as you said, it's very rewarding. It drops on June 25th on Metal Blade Records. If you want to check out the band, it's facebook.com/Fractal Universe Band. I'll put a link below to the band's Facebook and to their Bandcamp and stuff, so you can check out the album and let us know what you think. If you've heard any of the tracks, stick some comments in below. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. Much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.